I had a fantastic day in the garden today in terms of harvest, and you can see them all here. So there is the celery, the Sebago potatoes, baby carrot, a purple skin potato, not purple flesh, the broad beans, and also three types of herbs, which are the oregano, the sage, and also thyme. As great as these ingredients are, I'm not able to make the vegetable stew without other ingredients. So I have to supplement this. And these are my Spanish onion, or red onion rather, which is medium size, and also 2 cloves of garlic. I also need a liter of the vegetable stock, which you can get anywhere in supermarkets, a can of peeled tomatoes, which is about 300 grams, and a couple of spoonfuls of the tomato paste. So I've spared you the pain of watching me cut vegetables, but basically what I have done is cut up the potatoes into eighths, half the carrots, deshelled the broad beans, diced up the onion, and chopped the garlic finely, and also chopped up the celery. Heat up some oil in a pot under medium heat, and when the oil is hot enough, add on the onion and also the garlic, and fry this a little bit until the onions is translucent. This shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Once the onions are translucent, I add on my can of tomatoes. What I have bought are whole tomatoes, whole peeled tomatoes. So I need to cut these into smaller pieces so that they're not clumpy in the stew. Of course, what you can also do is buy diced tomatoes, so you don't have to do what I do. But it's no big deal because they're quite soft already anyway, so it's quite easily cut up with the spatula. Now you see that the stew here is a little bit dry. So what I tend to do at this stage is to add on a little bit of the stock just to make sure that the stew itself has got a bit more liquid and the bottom doesn't burn, because we really don't want to taste the burning taste in the stew itself. Now you've noticed at this stage I haven't actually added any seasoning at all, and there's really no need to, because the can of tomatoes would already have salt or sugar and other seasoning. What I do add though at this stage are my herbs, and the two herbs that I add on are the thyme and also oregano. And what I do is simply just tear these into smaller pieces because that would then release the flavor and the fragrance into the stew. And you can see that the stew is already bubbling a little bit. And once I've put in all of these herbs, I'll just stir it through and then leave it to infuse a little bit. Now you might ask, if you don't have access to any fresh herbs, can you use dry herbs? Absolutely. I mean, I have the luxury of a kitchen garden where I have all of these herbs, but if you don't have it, dry herbs work equally well. Just make sure that, they are still fragrant, and then that should do the trick. After a minute or so, add the carrot and potato pieces to the mixture. Once the carrot and potato pieces have been added, make sure you stir that through and add the stock. And the stock has to cover the vegetables. Now, in my case, 1 liter of stock is more than enough. But if you find that 1 liter of stock for your pot is not enough to cover the vegetables, there is no harm in adding more. What I add next is a couple of spoonfuls of the tomato paste. This adds a richness to the stew. I find that it just adds a more tomato taste to it, if that makes sense. The can of tomatoes is great, but it doesn't seem to have that richness, so I tend to add tomato paste as well. Now make sure that you stir through the tomato paste into the stew, because otherwise it will just clump up. So what I tend to do is to make sure that everything is broken down, or rather dissolve into the stew, because the last thing you want is to taste these clumps of tomato paste. What I add next are a few pinches of pepper, and this is really about the only seasoning that I would add to the stew, because as I mentioned earlier, the can of tomatoes and also the tomato paste would already have some seasoning in them, so I don't really need to add a lot. So I bring the stew to a boil, and then I turn it down a little bit to a simmer and close it up. So after about 20 minutes of simmering or so, the potatoes and the carrots are cooked. That means if you put a skewer through it, you can poke through the pieces of the vegetable. At this stage, I add the celery. Now, I didn't add the celery earlier because celery cooks very quickly. So I add it at this stage. And I just stir it through afterwards because they don't take a lot of cooking at all. Celery is a great addition to stews because it does impart that very nice celery taste. It's hard to describe it. I also add in the broad beans at this stage, and also the sage, and just again stir it through and mix it well together. So my stew is pretty much done at this stage, and what I need to do is just to let it simmer just a little bit more so that the celery is cooked, and then that's pretty much it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'll give the vegetable stew recipe a go because it is easy, it is tasty, and it doesn't take long at all. I mean, it took me less than half an hour to cook the vegetable stew. Now, if you want to follow my videos, please click on the subscribe button and you'll be notified when I upload new videos. Thank you for watching.